sangre del indio taíno, sangre de la raza negra, sangre de razas antiguas que nos dejaron su herencia, que llegaron a mi tierra de distintas procedencias, que llegaron a mi tierra de distintas procedencias.
We have a relationship to this land, to the Mother Earth, that goes beyond the legal definitions as defined by the United States courts, the legal system.
The United States military troops invade my country militarily. In 1898, we are still a militarily occupied country.
The state of Hawaii is no more than a limited liability third-party corporation, which is dealing with extortion, piracy, racketeering under U.S. laws and violating international laws.
One of our major concerns is the multinational corporations' work around creating nuclear dump sites of tribal lands in this country.
And people are beginning and saying, well, block by block, community by community, we will obtain our self-determination.
So fundamentally what we're talking about is a question of self-determination on the first hand, but on the second hand, the right to land. That self-determination implies that people have a right to build their own institutions, have their own government, and build their own state apparatus, which can only be done on the question of land.
We are asking you to recognize that the sovereignty, international legal sovereignty, over the lands inhabited by native peoples, Mexicanos, the new African black people, and the Puerto Rican people resides in the hands of the people themselves and not in the hands of the federal government, which is a criminal organization.
Speaking specifically about militarization, since the invasion and occupation of 1898 by the United States of Puerto Rico, there has been many instances of using the land of Puerto Rico for experiments, for bombing practices, and I will just give you some very brief examples. While 14% of the territory of Puerto Rico is taken up by U.S. military bases, for example, in the island of Vieques, which is one of the islands belonging to Puerto Rico, 73% of the island's territory has been taken over by the U.S. Navy. This began in World War II and has continued to the present day. It is used for storing of nuclear weapons. It is used for military training, not only for the United States forces, but also for forces of other countries, where it is leased to other countries for the military bombing practices. Vieques was used for practicing for the invasion of Grenada, among other things. The use of the island of Vieques has led to the deforestation and to the desertification of the island of Vieques, for with the destruction of the forest and the propagation of more desert-like plants, it has changed the pattern of rains. It is now much less rainy there. Also, the bombing and the other destruction of the natural environment and the corals around the area have led to a great diminution in the fish and sea life, which has caused grave problems, economic problems, for the people of Vieques, who lived by agriculture and by fishing. There is a deliberate attempt on the part of the U.S. Navy to take over the entire island of Vieques. The people of Vieques now live on about 27% of the island, and they are trying to take over the rest of it by making it impossible for the people of Vieques to live. To give you an idea of the kind of toxic waste that are being deposited in Puerto Rico, if you look at all of the United States, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, there are some 7,000 illegal sites for the dumping of toxic waste. Puerto Rico has 12% of those 7,000. Puerto Rico is an island 100 miles long by 35 miles wide.
A lot of private race industry companies approached Indian land with very lucrative, tempting proposals. We call it economic blackmail, promising our tribal governments lots of money, millions of dollars of money and potential jobs for permission to come onto our indigenous territories to build hazardous waste facilities, toxic waste facilities, municipal garbage waste facilities, nuclear waste facilities. And some of the reasons that these companies want to come on Indian land, indigenous land, is that a lot of our indigenous territories do not have environmental infrastructures in place. They do not have the environmental administration, the environmental tribal codes, regulatory standards.
Beginning in early 1970s, some 27 multinational corporations, including Union Carbide, Tennessee Valley Authority, a U.S. government-owned corporation, Mobil, Kerr-McGee, Westinghouse, Homestake, and Exxon, began acquiring claims to the Black Hills in order to exploit its uranium, coal, and oil reserves. Various plans for this energy development indicate much of the area would become an arid, radioactive wasteland for hundreds of generations.
It was the view of the FBI that an insurgency was occurring in the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota in the context that Bob Robidoux described. They were setting out quite explicitly to counter the insurgency. In effect, they were conducting a counterinsurgency campaign. Counterinsurgency campaign is not a police doctrine. It's not a law enforcement doctrine. It is a military doctrine. It is taught at the Special Warfare School at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
There's no question that there is a state of war. We understand that that state of war existed from the first time that Africa was actually snatched or kidnapped from the shores of Africa. That war has been undeclared war, but it has been a war. We look back through our history and we'll see that every step of the way that we've actually fought and we've resisted our oppression, we've resisted the torture that has taken place. We look at our history and we'll see that our war is undeclared war, but at the same time it takes many different levels. It has been physical, it's been what was called a low-intensity warfare, but it's been war yet the same. We have war casualties, we have political prisoners, and we have prisoners of war as a result of that.
I am a Puerto Rican prisoner of war. I am serving a 68-year sentence for the unconceivable crime of seditious conspiracy, fighting for the independence of my homeland, Puerto Rico.
Luis Rosa, for example, he's serving altogether 105 years. Ricardo Jimenez, 98 years. Elisan Escobar, 68 years. Carmen Valentin, 98 years. Carlos Alberto Torres, 78 years. Dilcia Pagan, 63 years. Adolfo Matos, 78 years. Alicia Rodriguez, 85 years. Idalu Rodriguez, 83 years. Oscar Lopez Rivera, 70 years. Alejandrina Torres, 35 years. Edwin Cortez, 35 years. Alberto Rodriguez, 35 years.
COINTELPRO was a secret operation. It was secret because it was unlawful. It represented a confluence between the FBI's internal security section and other sections devoted to counterintelligence against foreign agents. The rubric of operation directed lawfully, in the opinion of the United States, against foreign agents was not lawfully directed against the domestic population of the United States. The object of COINTELPRO was to utilize foreign agent neutralization methodologies to neutralize political activists, expression of political thought, and so on inside the United States. This could not be done openly. It was therefore done in a clandestine fashion until it was revealed in 1971.
The effort was to destroy and discredit the Black Panther Party by any means necessary. They were more concerned about our organizing young people, not as much as they were concerned about us being able to outgun them, but the fact that we were projecting new ideals and new concepts, and young people were beginning to listen to us and the things that we were talking about in relationship to the government itself. And we were beginning to develop institutions within the community. So therefore we became a threat to the internal security of the United States.
If you would recall, there was Jesse Unruh, who was the treasurer of the state of California, who mentioned that the Black Panther Party was feeding more hungry children than the United States government.
In the 1950s, when the COINTELPRO program was begun, at that time they created a border coverage program called the BOCOV, the border coverage. And that this program maintained offices in both the occupied territories and the independent capitalist Republic of Mexico. That it maintained offices in the major cities throughout the Southwest, throughout our homeland, as a way to keep tabs on the Mexicano community, on the Mexicano people.
Actually, the biggest headquarters of the CIA is not in USA, it's in Mexico City.
Why do you suppose that is?
We must understand that the Mexican and USA have 23,000 miles of 23,000 miles of border with Mexico, are 12 million of Mexicans in this country, and are thousands of people of color, as Chicanos, Asians, or blacks, that they know that Mexico, when will we start a revolution in Mexico, won't stop in the Rio Grande, that will jump in this country.
The Border Patrol came about in 1924, and before that date, the vigilante groups that patrolled the border was the Texas Rangers. There were variations, the Texas Rangers and the California Rangers, but pretty much they were used to kill the Mexicans that were coming over since the imposed border after the North American invasion into Mexico. So in 1924, the Border Patrol was established, and they recruited heavily from the Texas Rangers that put a lot of, infracted a lot of human rights violations against the Mexicans that were crossing that border, in killing them, in just going around raids, not just to the Mexicans that were crossing the border, but to the Mexicans that were granted citizenship on the northern occupied part of the border. So the Border Patrol to this day, well, at least has that legacy of racism and human rights violations against specifically the Mexicano people.
The Mexicano people have always continued to organize against the presence of the INS. That is why the main demand, the main issue is the abolition of the border. And that's why people are being called upon to come to the border to demonstrate their opposition to the forced division of a nation.
Make a change for the future, make a change for our communities, make a change for our children, make a change that we may take over the institutions that belong to us, remembering, keep in mind that that border symbolizes a division in nuestra gente, a division. So every time you march forward towards that border, remind yourself of who you are and the land that you're walking upon. Let us break those borders and let us unite nuestra gente hasta la vida. ¡Que viva la raza!
One of the things that is going on is with this hype of the drug war, the border right now, it's a deconstitutionalized zone. Everything goes. So the officers feel that they could get away with doing those illegal searches and in fact also raping women in the detention centers or before they take them to the detention centers.
Clearly, we understand the United States government's war on drugs is a sham. The new African nation and the new African population, particularly our youth, have no boats, no planes. We do not bring drugs into our communities. We do not control what actually takes place with the drugs. It's been used as a guise to round up the most progressive elements in our community. It has been used as a guise to begin to incarcerate our youth, particularly our young male youth, in large numbers, and put them inside a prison, which doesn't give them a chance to have any kind of full development.
To this date in America, there has not been one white person who has been electrocuted, hung, or in any way legally condemned to death for the murder of African people. In fact, they are walking around today and in many parts of this country treated as heroes. One example, the murder of the 3 civil rights workers in Mississippi. Those murderers, those that are still alive, are living, and they're living happily.
We see that the penal system is used within a society that is really a society that protects rich, is a capitalist society that will protect their interest.
Imprisonment of our people for political reasons, for asserting our own inherent sovereignty in our own way, on our own hands, on our own lands, means that we go to jail. But that is part of our program, to occupy our lands, to vitalize, revitalize our culture, and to provide for our livelihood. And if it means we go to jail, we go to jail. The people at Anahola, Kauai did just that. And the state, with the assistance of the Attorney General and the county state troopers, arrested them, demolished their homes. In Sand Island in 1980, our own people, living off the land and fishing, had their homes destroyed and burned, and they were put in jail.
The residents wanted to create a cultural village in a small portion of the park to pass on their knowledge of the ocean and shoreline to younger generations. But their efforts to resist eviction failed.
What I want to tell you guys, all you howlers, you guys remind me of 1898. So you guys, Holy Kauli Yahoy. And you, brother, you Hawaiian, Holy Kauli. On the Kauli Abilki. That's what I tell you guys. Bunch of intruders. That's all.
Dogs in our own country. This is how you treat Hawaiians, ladies and gentlemen. Put them in jail, knock down their homes, kill their culture, and eliminate the Hawaiian race.
There could not be a United States government without the extermination of Native people, the ripping off of their land, and the extermination and enslavement of African people. All the measures taken after the end of slavery were measures taken by Southern governments with the full support of the federal government to return blacks to a new form of slavery through a system of segregation, through a system that denied blacks the right to vote, through a system that would keep blacks as slaves on the land to use them as cheap labor. 40 acres and a mule, which was the idea that was conceived by a black preacher who was asked, what do blacks want? He said, 40 acres and a mule. Should have said the entire South, right?
They say they've tried to help our people, but all of the laws, even when some small cases are won, they're overturned by the corporations in the end. We get jailed for taking fish in our own lands to live by. Freedom of access to public lands is in favor of the commercial fishermen as opposed to the native traditional people fishing for their own livelihood.
You know, the government you're working for has never given us any written documents as far as the Western Shoshone land transfer. I want to know where, and I want the records of the land transfer from Western Shoshone to the United States. I want it, and I want it in my hands now. If you can't produce it to me, then it's illegal for you to go up there and gather my livestock. My rights were denied to me, and you know it. Everybody in your department knows it. All you people want to do today is come in here and steal my cows as you're stealing my land today. You didn't take it in 1872. You're taking it now. You're making my life miserable too. It's the only way I can protect myself. I gotta protect my livelihood. They talk about the Constitution. There's no Constitution as far as I can see. It doesn't protect me. It doesn't protect people of my color. It doesn't protect.
Yeah, but I think that it needs to be taken up in court.
They stopped the court system. They stopped the court system when it was going through courts. We were arguing on the title question of the Western Shoshone people. The Secretary of the Interior stopped the court system by acting as my trustee, as accepting that money, and then says payment has been made. Who's it been paid to? It's been paid to the United States of America. It hasn't. I don't want money. My land's never been for sale. It's not for sale now, or is it going to be not for sale tomorrow either? Mr. Jones, that's the way it is.
We look at this land from the basic point of not in individual ownership, but on the basis of that this land is mother to all things. And so it has a very significant meaning to us, and we can't in no way accept money for this land, because it's, as our grandmother told us a long time ago, this land is like a woman, a female. It provides for us all the necessities of life, from birth to up to the time we die and we go back to this land.
When the European people have come here, is that they look at land as property. And if you ever look at a larger spectrum as far as third world countries, people of color, they look at us as property also. So if someone wants to really address some of the issues I talk about, maybe they have to go to school and learn about property rights, because that's usually sometimes the way that they view us as property. They view women as property, the same way that they view the Mother Earth as property. So there's that connection. There's that connection. Before we can really understand what's happening with the environment, we have to also reevaluate our relationship to the earth, what is female, and the way that we treat our women folk throughout the world. It's a power and control issue. So we need to go deeper in our understanding.
And if we don't change this kind of relationship, we will be bringing up another generation of people who will be used to having hierarchies in society, who will be used to having domination over certain segments of society, and we don't like that. Because domination in all aspects of life works against social change.
Sometimes people talk about violence, but they only say about violence of the people, oppressed people defending themselves. Somehow they don't criticize the violence of the power. See, the power who commit violence against the people, against Panamanian people, against Nicaraguan people, against Haitian people, killing off by the thousands. How about that violence? But people kind of close their eyes, shut their eyes, and even send their children to that kind of violence, to kill for the Rockefellers and the J.P. Morgan and the ruling clique. See, I had the right to be a soldier of my country.
I think that we need to, again, unite the struggles to change the material base of a people, of a country, with radical cultural changes, changing people's attitudes, the values that we have, the priorities that we hold dear to our hearts that somehow work against us.
The indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere have had to live with the codification and criminalization of sexual behavior imposed upon us by Western culture, Western social mores, and Western laws.
All of us pledge to continue our resistance to the crimes outlined by today's speakers and commit ourselves to continue our work until there is a world where everyone can have true justice and freedom.
The findings of the tribunal represent an excellent educational tool, a political organizing tool, a means to go about developing the political consciousness among the general citizenry of this country so that they can take charge of the government, can fulfill their obligations and their responsibilities as citizens, and take this outlaw government of the United States and put it into another posture. One either of conformity with law, conformity with standards of human decency, or a posture of non-existence.
There will come a point, and there must come a point, when truth prevails. When truth can no longer be hidden. And there are people who will say, well, the truth is not absolute. That's true. But when you have built so many lies, that you have turned those lies into a truth, we have to unveil those lies to be able to reveal the hidden truths.